welcome to a video that is going to overload you with cool facts. Half of you guys come here to learn about the lore, and the other half comes here to learn about what's happening around League of Legends. So I thought, why don't I combine the two formats when it fits? So today, because Riot updated 3 bios for champions with the same theme, instead of covering them all separately and stretching each video to 10 minutes to please the monetizing overlords, I can cover all of them today, which will give us more time to make more interesting videos. Such as, I still want to make a video on all the side characters that could become champions in 2020. So without further ado, let's have a look at the newly updated stories of Jax, Draven and Alistar. Ever since we got more background on what happened in Icathia, Jax turned from a really cool comedic relief to a war-scarred badass. And that's because if you connected the dots hidden in the story called Where Icathia Once Stood, it was easy to realize that the legendary warrior called CZECH was in fact our Jax all along. We figured this out because the name matched, since Sai means desert in Shuriman, and Jax is Jax. But it was also obvious because CZECH liked to snack on eggs. And would you look at that, Jax's favorite snacks were also eggs. But now it is cool to have it finally confirmed, since Jax's newly updated bio starts with his full name. It is CZECH Scully Rings Ikathun. He was a warrior of Icathia, which was a city that wanted to live peacefully separated from the Shuriman Empire. Which the Empire obviously didn't like. Should even the smallest region leave the Empire, others could easily follow as well. Jax's father told him that before Icathia became part of Shurima, it was a proud nation, but then they became oppressed by the Emperor. He also told Jax stories about the Koari, which were heroes who protected Icathia and its Mage King. For a time, the Mage King resisted Shurima's conquest, but eventually he died in battle, and all of the Koari committed a ritual suicide. Then the Emperor displayed the Koari's decaying bodies for all to see, and the Mage King himself was impaled above the city's gates. As Jax's father passed these stories onto his son, he also gave him the burning resentment that was growing in every Icathian. This was one of the reasons Jax decided to study war and weapons, and he learned from both the Shuriman weapon masters and from his own clan's elders. After centuries of being ruled over by Shurima, a massive earthquake shook the coastal province of Sabra, and it revealed something hidden deep beneath the earth, something dark and powerful. Perhaps powerful enough to defeat Shurima's godlike ascended warriors. Jax was there when they discovered this dark power. He was protecting the Icathian mages when they descended down there to see it with their own eyes. The mages were barely able to push the power back, with their staffs that blazed with elemental fire. Disturbed, Jax escorted the mages back to the council to tell them what they saw. There, they called this power the Void. Immediately, the council realized ways how they could use it to push back Shurima. But Jax saw the doom the Void could bring as well. As a weapon master himself, he knew that a powerful weapon could also bring danger to the wielder. And in that moment, he regretted not killing the mages on their way back to the council. With this newfound power in their hands, the council named a new Mage King, and the Koari were rebuilt, with CZECH being one of the first heroes. Their early pushbacks were successful, as they liberated a city called CZECH, and CZECH even killed one of the Ascended in battle, which is absolutely unheard of even to this day. Remember, a corrupted Ascended was able to kill a literal god. Even if Jax fought a lesser version of that, it still puts his real strength to question. Finally, as the Ascended host marched onto Icathia, the events of Where Icathia Once Stood happened. As the two armies clashed, the Icathian mages and priests decided it was time to unleash their weapon. The dark power swept across the land and it wiped all Icathians, Shurimans and even the Ascended from existence. A few moments later, Icathia was lost. After this, Jax traveled back to the crater in Sabra where it all started. He was ready to take his own life, just like the ancient Koari heroes. But before he was able to do it, he noticed one of the flaming staffs laying there on the ground. It was still blazing with elemental fire that repelled the void, and CZECH realized there was hope. He picked up the staff and he made sure its fire would never die down. He called it the last light of Icathia. Ashamed of his past, CZECH Scully Rings Koari Ikathun would no longer use his old name. From that day, he was known only as Jax. After that, he left his home, and he traveled out into the world. The elemental fire extended his life, and yet the further away from Icathia he traveled, the dimmer the flame was. which made Jax realize he couldn't simply run away. He had the duty to come back. The surviving Ascended were able to stop the Void from advancing forward, but the threat was still there. Now Jax is on a new mission. He wants to find powerful warriors around the world, so he could rebuild the Koari once more. And together, they would defeat the Void in Ikathia once and for all. Unfortunately, to this day, even though he fought against many skilled warriors, no one proved strong enough to join him. Although this filled Jax with doubt, he still knows that in the end he will face the Void, even if he has to do it alone. This is the newly updated story of Jax. It's pretty simple and easy to understand if you have already read the story of Ikathia. But surprisingly, the story purposefully never revealed Jax's race. The Ikathian story mentioned that Jax had some kind of a sickness when he was a child, and that sickness ravaged his skin, which probably explains why he's blue. Although it could be that he was touched by the Void because he was so close to it. But since he has only 3 fingers, it is obvious that Jax isn't a human. Curiously enough, some people may remember that Ezreal randomly mentioned that there are sand trolls between Ikathia and Ishtal. And since trolls in League always have 3 fingers, it is highly likely that Jax is a troll as well. But as of right now, we got no confirmation as to what he looks like under the mask. Next, let's have a look at Draven, the second person fleshed out during this update. Draven was an orphan on the streets of Basilish. He was always overconfident in his own abilities, and the only reason why he was able to survive was because of his brother, Darius, who always finished the fights Draven started. When Basilish fell to the war hosts of Noxus, led by Captain Cyrus, as was shown in Darius's comic, Draven foolishly tried to take the captain down, but instead of punishing them, Cyrus was impressed with their fighting spirit, and he allowed them to join the Noxian ranks. Darius took his life easily in Cyrus's war host, but Draven grew increasingly more bored. There was no real reward for his efforts. He needed personal glory. As Darius rose to command his own warband, Draven joined him. However, Draven realized that higher ranks don't make his job easier, and they don't give him better recognition. So in the end, he left Darius's command. We don't know if he left on his own or if he was kicked out. But either way, Draven's skills were great for a duelist, and so numerous other warbands tried to recruit him during the invasion of Ionia. But in the end, Draven ended up with a fairly respectable contract in the Reckoning Pits. For centuries, the Reckoning Pits played an important part in the Empire. Noxus punished their criminals here, and noble houses used them for settling disputes. To Draven, they were a tool to finally gain some recognition. Unfortunately, with Noxus being at war on multiple fronts, fighting in arenas wasn't as appealing anymore. So Draven spent most of his times in the drinking halls and gambling dens. He was washed up and broke when the former General Jericho Swain found him. Swain had a plan to take down the Grand General, which back then was Boram Darkwill, and he needed Draven to succeed. Swain enlisted Draven under his command, which eventually led to Darius joining him as well. And with Darius on his side, Swain was able to take down the tyrant Boram Darkwill. Draven now stood triumphant beside Swain, and for the first time, he was warmed by the cheering of Noxian people. However, not every noble house supported Swain as the new Grand General, so they were sentenced to death in the arena. During the execution, one of the nobles managed to escape his handlers, but before he could get away, without hesitation, Draven leapt down from his balcony, and he hurled a pair of axes to cut down the fleeing man. There was a moment of silence before the crowd roared in approval. That's how Draven got his first fans. And that's how he got his new job. Draven was now the glorious executioner. He turned boring death sentences into grand spectacles. Soon after that, there was a revolution in how the Reckoning Pits worked. It wasn't just an arena to witness punishments anymore. It was a place for entertainment, with the Reckoners quickly becoming entertainers as much as combatants. Each Reckoner now had a carefully constructed backstory, fighting style and personality. The fights were still bloody, but they less often ended in death. The rivalries and trash-talking between the best-known Reckoners became the stuff of legend throughout the Empire, but none were talked about more than Draven. In Swain's new empire, Draven had both wealth and influence, and occasionally he still fought in Darius's warhost. But with all this success, Draven grew restless again. Now he has a new goal. In Noxus, he's a legend. but he awaits the day the entire world would know his name. That's the new Draven Story. It's pretty much the same as the old one, only now we have more details. And it explains this quote Swain had against Draven since release.
You stood by me when I was outcast, so I stood by you when you were drunk. In spite of the stench.
And lastly, let's have a look at Alistar, who was one of the last champions without proper lore. Alistar comes from one of the Minotaur tribes in the Great Barrier Mountains. The Minotaurs protected the trade routes with Zone for long years, although they prefer to stay out of Valorant's conflicts. Alistar was a warrior known across all the clans. His roar was able to scare away any trespassers. But outside of his duty, he always urged his fellow clan members to forge better bonds with the other races. To the rest of the world, Minotaurs were little more than beasts, and that made any interaction with the outside world more difficult. But then the matriarch of House Twain of Noxus approached the Minotaurs and offered them something better. Noxus was just about to take over Basilish, but the matriarch claimed they wouldn't be able to do it without the support of the Minotaurs. Obviously, many of the Minotaurs were eager to accept the offer. By joining Noxus, they would get some recognition from the other races. But Alistar remained skeptical. He fought Noxian scouts before, and he knew what kind of people they really were. And so, Alistar, together with 50 of his best warriors, marched out to meet the matriarch and refuse her offer. The other clans were free to do whatever they wanted, but Alistar wouldn't kneel before Noxus. Unfortunately, as soon as Alistar made his position known, he was betrayed from within. The other clans already pledged themselves to Noxus, and they were ready to protect Lady Twain. This escalated into a bloody battle where Alistar himself crushed the matriarch's skull. But still, in the end, he and his followers ended up in chains, and they were headed towards the Noxian capital. There, all of his clan members were spread across the Reckoning Pits, and they were all forced to fight during the fighting festival known as the Fleshing. When the festival ended 21 days later, Alistar was the only Minotaur left. After that, he was forced to keep fighting more and more Reckoners like some kind of a beast. And as he killed more and more, his memories of home became tainted with blood. Eventually, Alistar met Aelia, a servant girl in the arenas. At first, he thought she would see him as a toy, just like all the other Noxians. But he was surprised when she talked to him with gentle respect. Her home was also claimed by Noxus, and that was all the two needed to have in common to become friends. In fact, when Aelia thought of a plan how to escape, she shared the plan with Alistar so they could escape together. And so, one night Aelia brought Alistar the key to his cell. She had to sacrifice a lot for this plan to work. And so Alistar promised her he would repay her tenfold. Together they ran to a nearby river where a cargo ship waited for them. But when they got there, Noxian agents ambushed them. Alistar hurled himself into battle, and suddenly his vision was red with rage. Aelia called out to him again and again, but Alistar didn't hear her. By the time he calmed down, the ship was gone, and Aelia with it. So Alistar continued his escape south on foot instead. Weeks later, the Noxian leadership changed, and the Minotaur's escape became quite forgotten. Now Alistar travels alone, as quietly and anonymously as he can, though in every city he passes through, he asks after Aelia. And that was the story of all three updated fighters. Covering them all together was probably the better idea than waiting weeks for me to release them separately. Honestly, Jax got the best story here, but that's because we already knew a thing or two about him, so he just escalated to a higher level. However, that still doesn't take away from the fact that Jax's staff now officially has more lore than Gragas. Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have need mugs and shirts too? The links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you, come again.